What more do you people want? You have the smoking gun today. Good morning. Kelly Nash with the National Briefing. The smoking gun was revealed yesterday. Part of the 24 pages that were declassified. And the woman's name who is behind the smoking gun that launched the whole Russia collusion, her name is Julianne Smith. Julianne Smith, you might recognize that name as the former ambassador to NATO. She was rewarded for her efforts by Joe Biden. Joe Biden obviously was in on the Russia collusion hoax, as was Barack Obama, as was a lot of people in the Democrat Party. But it was all the brainchild of Julianne Smith. Who says that, by the way? Well, it would be a guy who I had never heard of, a guy named Leonard Bernardo. Now, who is Leonard Bernardo? He is the vice president of something called the Open Society. If you're very steeped in politics, you might be familiar with the Open Society. If you're going to try to tell this story to your friends, which I hope you do try to tell your friends about this because nobody's really talking about this. Open Society was built in the late 80s and early 90s by George Soros as basically a propaganda machine. George Soros has given literally billions. Matter of fact, when we say billions of dollars, in 2017, according to the Wikipedia page for Open Society Foundation, in 2017, George Soros transferred in $18 billion to help that foundation spread propaganda. It's the second largest. They call it a philanthropic, which I love the fact that they're not calling themselves a propaganda machine. They're a philanthropic organization. They're the second largest in the world, only behind the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. They spend billions to make sure you don't know the real stories. Thankfully, there's still some journalists like Fox News, New York Post. I love the New York Post because the New York Post will condemn stuff on the right as well. They'll report on things on the right, but they're not afraid to report about things on the left. They're the ones who obviously broke the Hunter Biden laptop from hell story, which was then basically deplatformed. But anyway, let's go back to 2016. In the email, this is July 25th, Leonard Bernardo, vice president of the Open Society, is now sending out an email to everybody in the machine. Julie, that's Julianne Smith, says it will be a long-term affair to demonize Putin and Trump. Now it's good for a post-convention bounce, but later the FBI will put more oil into the fire. He just told you that James Comey has signed off on the plan. That's what that says. He might as well have just said, James Comey wants to help spread lies. Later, the FBI will put more oil into the fire. Right now, we've got the post-convention bump. We just had the Democrat National Convention. We've been talking about the fact that there's some Russian collusion going on, that it appears that they have some information on Donald Trump, but that's just coming from us and the political side, our top spokespeople. We haven't started really using the intelligence community. You're not supposed to be able to use the intelligence community, but that's what he's telling you. We've already got them locked up and ready to go. They're going to help us win the election. 2 days later, the same fool sends out another email. Hillary Rodham Clinton has approved Julia's idea about Trump and the Russian hackers hampering our U.S. elections. So there's your sign off. Hillary Rodham Clinton just signed off on a deal that we're going to spread a lie that Trump and the Russian hackers are working together against all Americans in the U.S. elections. Why? He says it in the email. This should distract people from Hillary's missing emails. She is the one who's been hacked. Remember, in the private servers in her house, the Russians hacked it. They've got the private dirt on her. Remember, we found out later, Putin had dirt on Hillary. He wanted her to win so that he could then use that dirt against her. So Hillary counteracts it with her own lies, brainchild by Julianne Smith. This should distract people from her own missing emails, especially, well, then they go on talking about the Russian problem with the steroids at the Olympics. But this was all in the documents. That was in the Durham report. So now we have to break down the Durham report and say that that's a lie. Let me just take you over to today's New York Times. The old gray lady. Headline, Clinton plan emails. Oh, Clinton plan is like in quotations. The Clinton plan emails, those are likely made by Russian spies. The Russian spies are the ones who are sending these emails. This is all the Russian spies back in 2016 somehow hacked into some guy I never heard of at the Open Society and started sending emails to Debbie Wasserman Schultz and Barack Obama and the whole crew in order to cover their tracks in case this was discovered a decade later. Is that what we're to believe, New York Times? How far will the New York Times take this BS? Well, again, it's their tushes on the line as well. Let me go back to the 2018 Pulitzer Prize. Here we go. The staff, this is, if you just look up the 2018 Pulitzer Prize winners, and there's a whole bunch of people who won a whole bunch of Pulitzer Prizes. But for national reporting, both the staffs of the New York Times and the Washington Post for their deeply sourced, relentlessly reported coverage in the public interest that dramatically furthered the nation's understanding of the Russian interference in our 2016 presidential election and its deep connections to the Trump campaign. I love the fact that they put relentlessly reported because that's what it was. And the New York Times knows it. Everybody knew it. They all knew it was a lie. Now that as Obama's former pastor said, the chickens are coming home to roost. What is John Brennan, head of the CIA at the time, who's also deeply implicated in all this? He runs on over to the very friendly MSNBC and talks to Ana Cabrera, who she points out the fact, well, now they're opening an investigation into you. John Brennan almost sounds like he's laughing at the beginning of this answer.
Well, if the director of CIA and the director of national intelligence make referrals to the Department of Justice, I think the Department of Justice has to do something to respond to it. So putting together an internal strike force, whatever, to take a look at this information is certainly, I think, understandable. But also, I'd like to think that professionals in the Department of Justice will dismiss any of these referrals because they're baseless. They really are.
But do you worry at all that the Trump loyalists who are installed in those key positions would find a way to punish you regardless of what the evidence reveals?
Well, I guess they're going to do what they were going to do, Anna. I just feel as though what we did was right. We would have been derelict if we didn't do these things. So again, I just like to think that, again, professionals in the Department of Justice and FBI and other places are not going to carry on this, what I think is an absurd effort to try to denigrate the work of intelligence professionals as well as the former leaders.
John Brennan is openly saying to the current crop of FBI and CIA agents, don't do anything bad to us. Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't denigrate our work. Don't denigrate your own coworkers' work. Are you kidding? John Brennan is filthy. And he's talking about we would have been derelict in our duties. If you hadn't have spread the lies? Now, again, just because people keep asking, why do the Republicans continue to go back to 2016? Donald Trump gave you a great answer yesterday because he was being asked by some smug reporter, well, if you knew that these, tariffs were going to be so fantastic, why didn't you do them in your first term?
Why didn't you invoke this law in your first term? You could have taken in billions upon billions of dollars in your first term, but you waited until your second term.
Yeah, because in my first term, I was fighting lunatics like you who were trying to do things incorrectly and inappropriately to a president that was duly elected.
That's why they totally handcuffed Trump in his first administration. You, the American people, were denied what the Trump presidency would have been like because of these. I'm just so frustrated with this stuff. And the fact that this stuff is not really screaming front page news right now on every newspaper, on every newscast. This means you have to do the heavy lifting now. You have to make sure that your independent friends, even your Democrat friends, are fully aware that, again, Hillary Rodham Clinton authored a deal with the FBI specifically to spread lies about the Russian collusion hoax.